here we are.
Welcome to my kitchen. And this is the first day of hand rolling the Kyphi batch that is called Lunar Eclipse because we started making it on the night of a full lunar eclipse. This was the one that used figs as the main fruit base instead of raisins or dates. And I have to say that there is a distinct difference in texture from day one with this. It's a lot less sticky. Definitely holds together much more like an actual dough. Kind of looks probably the same on your end, but trust me that it is less sticky. It has a lot more substance to it. This one is the first one where I substituted a number of different ingredients, most of which are still sourced from the same area, in order to get a slightly different magical goal with this particular Kyphi. So this one is sort of subtitled Protection During the Dark Hours. And has a lot of sort of like solar associated stuff added into it. There's dragon's blood and opopanax, a couple of other, I'm trying to think of like what all got switched and substituted. I have it written down and I should probably go grab that.
Where is it written down? I can grab it for you.
Behind, you know where I keep my iPads on the couch in the office? That spiral notebook has the whole recipe on it.
I'll be right back.
It was tricky to try to like make sure I was doing like one for one in terms of if we use this much frankincense, which is a resin, make sure that I use an equal amount of also a resin so that we are ultimately getting the same kind of substance and structure when it's all done.
Let's see.
That's the original one.
Okay.
That's 2019 June. A bunch of notes from EdFu. That's the May 7th one, full moon. And there will be notes from classes. There's the cheapy Kyphi.
Oh, I remember these glasses. Yeah. Oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
Trying to keep you. That's still May.
Yeah. Some stuff on chakras.
This is the best.
There we go. Okay, that's
this
the one. Okay. Cynthia, June 5th, full lunar eclipse. So the fruit base is golden raisins and Turkish figs. Honey wine instead of red wine. And galangal root powdered. And let's see, pine nuts instead of juniper berries, elderberries. Henna, catnip instead of the Egyptian mint. Honey bush, white cedar. It's got a tablespoon of agarwood or aloes wood. Let's see. Styrex benzoin, google gum instead of the myrrh. And overall, it's got a much subtler scent to it. And I think that that's largely the frankincense and the myrrh in the base Kyphi recipe is where most of the scent comes from. I actually also think the cypress grass has a huge effect on it as well. This one still has cinnamon. So probably the most significant change would be swapping dragon's blood instead of frankincense and google gum, otherwise known as opopanax, instead of regular myrrh. No, it's related to myrrh. It's just it's got a less sharp scent to it, and it has a couple of different attributions and applications, particularly in Ayurvedic medicine. So everything in this one is aimed for protection and immune boosting kind of things, like things that are meant to strengthen and help. The original Kyphi recipe stuff is more about opening the gateways of imagination and dream to allow for visions and spirit communication. And while there are shades of this, it is more about opening those doors to allow things that will protect you to come through, or to allow you to find your strength, your power, to protect yourself during the dark hours. Okay, when my fingers start getting it warm, it is still very tacky.
Good to know.
Instead of giving it a little dusting of benzoin, we're giving it a dusting of dragon's blood, which is powdered in here.
Neat. Okay. So I'm going to come over and help you with your rolling again. Let's see, to do that, I need to position the computer where I can read it.
Okay.
So I can catch people's questions as they come. Okay. But let's see. Oh, people are asking what we're making.
This
It's a
is
good first question.
This is the final step in a many month long process of crafting an ancient temple incense called Kyphi. And this is a unique kind of homegrown recipe on it. It uses many of the same basic ingredients and substitutes a couple of things significantly to sort of tune the purpose and the intent of the incense from simply opening doors to visions and dreams, and instead giving us protection during the dark hours, which is one of the reasons I started making the batch on the night of a full lunar eclipse.
Okay. There we go. Nice big pan ready for us. This is fun. I've got enough banners queued up now that I can just flop between banners without having to type them all.
Could you get the?
Oh,
I'm
okay.
already getting too warm.
Yeah, you are.
I don't know why I
very
bothered. I really don't know.
Being
At this point,
fancy.
everybody should just be used to seeing me in a tank top.
I mean, it's not like it's hot in our house. It's
No, it's
quite
just
cold.
Is it? It doesn't
It's
feel cold.
66 degrees.
Oh.
It's pretty chilly.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
People with human bodies.
It's too warm.
Just saying. Oh, hang on.
What?
I'm seeing a way that we can adjust so people can see both of our faces
Okay.
at the same time. Hopefully you won't also see too much of my computer.
Oh.
Oh, good. What did I do?
Oh yeah, just move that. I meant to.
Okay. Cool. Let's see what else.
And this is what we're looking at. There we go. It's with the dusting of dragon's blood. It's got a nice rusty sort of color to it.
Yes, it is a lot of Kyphi. So there's a question. When you were on Paranormal State, did you ever have trouble with attachments? And if so, how did you deal with them?
I didn't, but I did troubleshoot for other people, especially clients. I'd been dealing with spirits and hauntings of all sorts for, let me see, I started working in Paranormal State in 2006, and I'd been doing like active investigation and stuff since honestly, the late 80s. So I had a little bit of work under my belt at that point. I mean, the simplest thing is if you're going into an investigation, you want to make sure that you know how to ground and center and shield and protect yourself, and go in to the location already with some protections in place. Now, if you're working as the psychic, if you are somebody who has sensitivities, and it is your goal to use those sensitivities during the investigation, there's a certain amount of openness you need to maintain. And what you end up doing there is, instead of having hard shields, you think of them as filters. So they protect you and allow just enough to come through, only what you want to allow to come through, but keeps out anything that would be overwhelming, too unpleasant, unwelcome, etc. And if you happen to be at the location and you feel overwhelmed, if you're not being like I was paid to kind of like go into the lion's den and deal with the fact that my head was in the lion's mouth occasionally, what you want to do is remove yourself from where you feel uncomfortable. First, if it's like you're in a specific room and that doesn't feel good, step out of the room. Does it change? If you still don't feel good, step out of the entire location. Go somewhere where you feel safe, or where you can at least try to shake off the sense of whatever is attached to that room, that building, etc. If you are of a religious bent, prayer certainly never hurts. Asking a higher power to kind of bail you out is never a bad idea. And that goes for whatever your religious system may be. And if you're not religious, that's totally fine, because it is within your power, so long as you actually believe in yourself, to maintain the boundaries and to fight off something that would be trying to attach to you. Just imagine it as something that has like little threads that it started to connect to you, and cut them off, burn them off, ask your higher power to rip them off. This is kind of
It's very sticky.
yeah. Well, it's good right up until a point, and I think it's actually starting to warm up because it might have been colder in the room.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So
It's body heat. It's all you. You're too hot.
come on, baby, light my fire. Yeah. So Kyphi making is a very, very long, involved process. The recipe that I use appears chiseled into the walls at the Temple of Edfu in the laboratory room, and that's in Egypt. It was incense that was used in the ancient temples of Egypt. It is several thousand years old, and you take all of these different ingredients, anywhere between, recipes vary, but like anywhere between 12 and 18 individual ingredients that's going to need to be ground. And
Okay.
it has
Should
to
I start
be
on that?
added and boiled. What I need is in the other room, on top of all the stuff, you'll see that big,
Okay.
mokahete, I think.
Yeah.
It's probably already red from the previous time I was grinding dragon's blood in it. I knew, yep. Well, I kind of, knew that this was going to be the next step, so I didn't bother to get the dragon's blood out. We don't want to put it directly on there. Yeah, put it on something.
It's made of wood.
Yeah, well, also the mokahete is real heavy.
Yeah.
Honestly, an easier thing would be.
We're improvising.
No,
Watch out.
This is actually very, very easy to grind. I was crushing it up with just the back of a spoon.
Oh, that sounds like a good more helpful.
Yeah. As you can see, the spoon.
It's my favorite color.
The spoon or the dragon's blood?
Yes. I mean, they're the same color now. At least on the part that you showed me.
Now we'll grind this up and try not to think about how expensive dragon's blood is these days.
From a simpler time.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ooh, a big question from someone's psychic 16-year-old daughter. She'd like to know how to develop and control it.
Okay. I mean, developing it is... Controlling it is actually the harder of those two things. Developing it, the first step is to really start just paying attention to it. I recommend to a lot of people when they get sick of hearing it, keep a journal. Like, whether it's a vlog, whether it's just audio files that you dictate to your phone, written journal, whatever, keep records of what your experiences are so that you can best analyze them. One of the things that I recommend to people always is experience in the moment, analyze after. So allow yourself, with as little judgment as possible, to just be open to the experience when it's happening. Try not to be afraid, try not to question your sanity, just have the experience. And then after the experience, step back from it and record as much as you can. And from that, once you have like the raw experience, then you can start putting your thinking cap on and analyzing, like, how was I feeling? Was there something that front-loaded me? Was there some other ordinary and mundane thing that could have happened in the environment that caused this experience? And write in a separate ink if you're writing down, or in some way that you know that these are now additional notes, any of your interpretations of the experience. And I mean, good news, bad news, you'll be doing that for a while. And honestly, I'm still doing that. It's important to realize that this is a journey, not a destination. You will always be working on it. And learning how to control it, you have to understand what your abilities are before you really can figure out how to turn them up or turn them down. And again, that's a lot of that comes down to keeping good records. Another thing that really helps is having at least one study buddy, somebody that you can confide in, somebody who's not afraid to call you on your bullshit if you're getting like too caught up in wanting to believe.
I am the Lord of everything. I know all your thoughts.
Yes, exactly.
That's not true. At least not for me.
And you know, there's some places online. I'm gonna say also just be very careful and wary of that, because anybody can make a YouTube channel. Says the person with a YouTube channel. Anybody can declare themselves Lord Phoenix Droven, Lord of Psychic Development, and you should probably always do a little checking around for anybody who claims to have all the answers. You know, who are they? What are their experiences? Who else do they know? Where did they learn? Do they tell you that their way of doing things is the only one right way? Because that should be a big flag right there. Do they tell you for the low price of $29.95, they will give you the answers to life, the universe, and everything, 42? Probably not someone to trust.
Oh, people are asking, how do you get Kyphi? I have put a banner up on the screen.
Oh, good.
In fact, with one place to get Kyphi, which is from Michelle's store.
Now, I know that there's little Etsy sellers that also do their own versions of Kyphi. So you can go poking around online and find a bunch of different variations of it. I don't know many people who do like the full make this thing step by step over the course of 2 weeks, let it cure for 3 to 4 months.
Which is what the original recipe says to do.
And sources it from like all of the same places that the stuff was sourced from within reason, because some of the things might be extinct. But it's also why it's expensive, because this is frankincense and myrrh and some really this one traded out like gum mastic for pine, so yay.
I just realized another thing, because the only kind of Kyphi that's currently available through your website is the silver mirror, which is the other vintage of Kyphi.
Yeah, so I do them.
So I'm going to go in and fix that.
I do the Kyphi in small batches, and each batch ends up being a little bit different, because everyone is me experimenting a little bit, but also like the time that I'm making it, and the humidity, the heat, like the temperature of where you're making it has a big influence on how quickly it cures and how strong the scent ends up like as it ages up. Also, like what wine you use. The base of this type of incense is honey, wine, and fruit. So the honey that you use makes a difference. The wine that you use makes a difference. Where the frankincense is sourced makes a difference. It is a very, very nuanced scent. It's also very unlike what we're generally accustomed to with incense. It's not something that you can just light a charcoal and dump this on the charcoal. This needs to be on a low heat where it slowly releases the scent, as opposed to just burns it to a cinder right away. The closest modern incense that's still in use that's similar to this is Bakur, which is used throughout the Middle East. And that is a heavy resin with a lot of woods like packed into it, a lot of agar wood, a lot of sandalwood, a lot of frankincense and myrrh, and it's kind of a direct descendant. Well, I don't know that I have the academic expertise to say that Bakur is a direct descendant of Kyphi, but I can say that it's pretty clear that there is a line of descent there. Yeah, I started making this kind of on a lark. So I work with a group of people, and we do a lot of work with past life stuff. And scent, as you may know, is a huge memory trigger, both for certainly for memories from this life. And we were sitting around talking about like, well, sense from past lives, sense as triggers in past life memory. And some of us feel that we have connections to ancient temples, and we're like, well, what would be one of the scents that would be pretty obvious? Incense. And I went poking around and was like, okay, so this ancient temple incense, it was used, this many thousands of years. So if you ever think that maybe you had a past life that popped up around this particular region within, plus or minus a millennia, you probably smelled this incense because they kept using basically the same recipe the whole time with small variations. So I was like, well, what does it smell like? Like, what does it take to make this stuff? And do all of the ingredients, like, can you still get them? So much of ancient Egypt's trade, it wasn't exclusively devoted to incense, but their religion, their spiritual life was so significant to that culture that a great deal of trade throughout the world was engaged in order to get them ingredients for things like Kyphi. Kyphi is the Hellenic Greek version of the word. The original word is kapet, and it just means incense. In Syriac, it's kupar. And I'm getting very gummed up here.
So am I. He's most sticky.
Okay, this is what I grabbed this guy for. The hobby has become more than a hobby when you've started to buy stuff to like
just to get it off your fingers.
Well, yeah, to just specialize like what you're doing with the hobby.
So
That's sharp.
Here's a question. Are you just rolling with the ingredients, or are you infusing them with will and purpose on top of the inherent properties and tradition? That's from Ryan.
Yeah. No, I am absolutely putting a lot of work into this one. This one specifically was the first one that I was like, you know what? I have more than just make it be Kyphi and do the like thing that they say Kyphi does, which in the ancient world, a lot of the Greek texts, they talk about Kyphi as like the scent that delights in the night, and this sort of like scent that opens the gateway of imagination and dreams. So it was burned in the evening during the temple. So in ancient Egypt, they would burn incense at the morning, at noon, and at night. Kyphi was what they burned at night. So it was kind of like their call to Vespers was this use of this incense. And the previous vintages, the previous batches, because I've been making batches since June of 2019, were all infused with that spirit communication. And open the doors and open the psychic eye and open the people who are scenting this so that they are better able to be in touch with their intuition and their abilities and to reach across the veil and communicate. So that was the previous ones. This specific batch, if you go back, it feels like it was forever ago, but in June, the beginning of June, there was a lot of stuff going on. And I made this one with the intention of protection because it was really obvious that we were going to need that and that it wasn't going to quiet down anytime soon. Like we definitely needed something. And the dragon's blood and a couple of the other things that I added into here were intentionally calling in Setian energy. That's why it's protection during the dark hours. And some people are going to go, oh, Set, the Egyptian god Set is the god of chaos and earthquakes and bad things, and he's associated with Typhon, and all of that's true by the time you get to Hellenic Egypt, like way along stuff. But if you go to the old stories where Set starts off as the twin of Horus and not his creepy uncle, the twin of Horus the Elder, Set has a completely different personality. First of all, he's known as Great of Strength. He's known for his strength. And one of the reasons he is known for his strength in the mythos, which is very solar oriented, the sun rises, is born with the dawn, makes it to the noon, comes down, and as the sun goes under the horizon, the sun dies every single day. And as Ra descends below the horizon, Ra then makes a similar transit through the underworld that is the equal and opposite of his journey across the sky from horizon to horizon. So we get to see on the upper level of the world from dawn to dusk the transit, the dayside transit of Ra. But from dusk until dawn, there is a night side transit.
Makes sense.
That is imagined as occurring with Ra in this bark on this river. So he's in a boat, and he's surrounded by his retinue. But it's not a safe journey, and it's not an easy journey. And there is, among many things that threaten Ra during this journey, is the serpent Apophis, or Apep. And Apep, to make it very generalized and very simple, think of Apep as kind of an embodiment of chaos, of entropy, of nothing. Apep wants nothing more than to like wrap the bark of Ra in its coils and devour it and ensure that the sun will never rise again. Well, everybody's there to try to like bodyguard Ra, but only Set is strong enough and brave enough to stand at the prow of the bark of Ra with his spear made of meteoric iron and can overcome the serpent Apep. So Set is the protection in the dark hours. And Set's color is red, and that is why dragon's blood was one of the key things I wanted to fold into this particular version of Kyphi. And it's also why each little bloop of incense, as we roll them, much as the great scarab Kepra would roll the disk of the sun each morning, they are coated in a little bit of red to mark them as children of Set. Tishiru.
Oh, there are questions from a couple people already about what type of burner to use with Kyphi.
Okay, so Kyphi is complicated when it comes to burners because, like I said, we might be used to just like taking incense like this and sticking it directly on a charcoal, and that's just the wrong thing to do with this. You'll scorch it, it will smell like burnt sugar and burnt fruit, and it's not fun. And you waste an incredibly expensive product. Like the kind of stuff that went in here was not cheap. The agar wood especially was whoa. So you want it on, if you can find a burner that allows you to control the heat, that has a dial. I have found that between 150 and 180 degrees Fahrenheit is an ideal temperature, which sort of puts like wax burners out of the running because they're a little bit too cool. You know, they only go up to like maybe 80 or 90, and while that's good for like melting wax and releasing the essential oils that are in the wax, and you don't want a wax burner to be much hotter than that because you don't want your wax to catch on fire. That's just bad. For the Kyphi, that's just all that's going to do is melt it a little bit, and you'll have sticky goo that doesn't really release the scent. So there are burners called Bakur burners, and that's Bakhoor, and those are for that type of incense that I mentioned earlier, Bakur, which is used throughout the Middle East. It is heavy in resin and in scented woods, and seems like it is certainly, Kyphi is probably its near ancestor. I have heard pretty good reports from folks who have used like kind of jury rigged a little thing out of tinfoil or whatever, so it's like just a little bit above the hot charcoal. There are people who have lit the charcoal, let the charcoal like do its like I'm super red and I'm starting to ash and everything, but let the charcoal cool off a little bit, not completely go out, but it's not like, you know, super red hot. And they've found that works a little bit. And someone had used, you know, those little soapstone diffusers where you put a little votive candle underneath a little bowl. That seems to be pretty decent as well. Yeah, the main thing is just make sure you don't put it directly on charcoal. Also, a hot plate. If you have a little hot plate that keeps your tea warm, that gets up over 150 degrees, if you have a hot plate or your stove, my only thing about that, do not put it directly on the hot plate. You will never clean it off. Put it on a little piece of tin foil or something. This is very sticky stuff. It is full of plant resins and other things that are just going to like stain that forever.
Check in questions. Oh, yes. Can we put the recommended burning procedures in writing somewhere?
Yes.
They are, in fact, in writing somewhere.
Yes.
And I will put that somewhere up as a banner right now.
Yeah, I'm getting, pretty much more and more pages devoted to Kyphi on my website because this is just not a small undertaking.
Nope. The ingredient lists are coming soon.
Yeah. Yeah, if you feel up to like typing those out at some point, if I fail again at getting them out of the notebook.
That's what websites are for.
Yeah.
Wow, you have a growth. It's a very good smelling growth.
Yeah, this one is so regular Kyphi. The first scent is sweet and honey, and then under that is the sharpness of myrrh, almost a licoricey smell that still has like that warm honeyed fruit scent to mitigate it, and then it sort of finishes off with the piney clean scent of the frankincense. This one is all sweet with a little bit of warm spice. So there's the dragon's blood that like has almost. Dragon's blood is a weird incense to work with because it's got a sharpness at first, but it actually burns with sort of a powdery sweetness. And that mixes with the fruit and the honey wine, but underneath that is cinnamon and honey bush and the agarwood, which I cannot adequately describe the scent of agarwood. It's also known as aloes wood or oud wood. The agarwood that I used was from Vietnam. There's a little Etsy shop that it was really hard to find agarwood that was not of questionable provenance. It is some of the most expensive wood on the planet, and powdered it's at least within a price range, and a lot of places sell stuff that is not agarwood, that is just like it might have a small dusting of agarwood on top of something else. So buyer beware on that if you want to explore what the hell that stuff is. It's also called, I think, jingo in Japanese, sinking incense, because so agarwood is actually kind of funny. It is what happens to a specific type of tree if that tree develops a fungal infection, and a very specific fungal infection, and it changes the wood and it changes the scent of the wood, and there's a great deal of resin that is in it, such that the parts of the tree that are infected with this sink. It becomes that heavy. So hence sinking incense.
Oh, let's see. Lots of questions.
Yeah. Get off my fingers.
Could you talk a bit about what to expect in the Field Guide to Spirits class?
Yeah. It is riffing. So actually, my very first publication, not my very first publication, but my very first paid publication in the paranormal was in 1998, and it was a Field Guide to Spirits, and it was through Llewellyn's New Worlds magazine, and this is just sort of like formalizing it. So it's going to be an overview of all the different types of spirits, with the understanding that to actually catalog every type of spirit, like a taxonomy of the other side, would take lifetimes and degrees in multiple languages, because frankly, every culture has different descriptions, different names for, and different takes on, in my opinion, in some cases, very similar things. Although I also think that there are certain things that are very unique to each culture. So we're going to start off with human spirits and all the different things that can come from humanity. And then from there, we will start diving deeply into non-human spirits and what's an elemental, and is an elemental the same or different from a fairy, and what are fairies only things connected to the British Isles? What do we mean when we use these words? How do we identify them when we encounter them in hauntings or investigations? How do you tell the difference between a residual haunting or an intelligent human spirit or an elemental or a jinn or any of these other, like, just billions of different names, honestly. And I will try to kind of navigate that for people with an eye also toward understanding that in some cases, the name is the best we can do to describe something we don't fully understand. And I will try in each case to make sure that we've got a little space at the end for some questions. But it's a very toothsome topic. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, and it's gonna be 4 Saturdays all this month. So starting this coming Saturday, October 10th. And classes tickets are available to the class now at michellebelanger.com/events, which I think is actually currently the banner that I have up. It is.
I wouldn't know what to do without her.
I wouldn't know what to do without good questions from the chat section.
Yeah. So yeah, it's sort of like my Spooktober thing to do of like let's talk spirits.
When is the Dictionary of Demons new edition coming out?
Oh, that's a great question. So,
indeed.
Okay, so a funny thing happened on the way to the publisher. It was due out on September 8th or 9th, a Tuesday at the beginning of September. And I did not get to find out that it was going to be delayed until the week before, which is why nobody got a lot of warning about that, including me. At this moment, what I know for sure is the delay was on the end of where the books got printed. And that has since shipped to the publisher, which means that if you ordered directly from llewellyn.com, you probably have your copy already. But at the moment, it seemed like that is the only place where it has actually shipped from. So the next step was printed back to the publisher's warehouse. The publisher started sending out what was directly ordered from them, and that includes all of the shipments that go to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and individual stores all over the place. So the only thing holding it back at this point is how long do those shipments take to get to Amazon's warehouse or Barnes and Noble's warehouse, and then how long does it take them to process it and then get it to you? Which is probably why Amazon at this point is saying end of November, because they don't want to make a promise, since, let's be honest, shipping and the mail are a little questionable right now. So it's looking like, depending on where you bought it, you may already have it. You may have it by the end of this month. And there is an outside chance that you will not have it until the end of November, which doesn't make me happy.
Disappointing.
Yeah, no, it's but at the same time, I mean, these are strange times. There's a lot of things going on, and if the worst I have to deal with due to COVID is that my book kind of got delayed by a couple of months, I mean, at least it will be out in the world, and
we do have like author copies that have come in, so we've gotten to see how awesome it looks, and it looks awesome. Like if you are an aficionado of either the subject matter or just a fan of my awesome partner, you will not be disappointed when it shows up, even if it shows up super late.
Yeah, I really would have liked people to have it at least in time for Halloween.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Well, and the thing is on the author's end, it actually really hurts a lot of things. I mean, at least it's a 10th anniversary edition. It's not like this is like my first book coming out or like the first book in a series, because this would kill that series. It would just completely shoot it to death, because the first 2 or 3 weeks of sales and the response from readers in those first very crucial couple of weeks of a release, pretty much that is all any publisher or outlet ever look at in terms of numbers. Like, did it do really, think of it as an opening weekend for a movie. Only you've got 2 weeks for the opening weekend of your book. And if it doesn't like just bust down the doors and have everybody buzzing about it, then it's not a blockbuster. It's a flop. There's a lot of authors who are really hurting because the same stuff is going on with them, only they're launching series. They're a brand new author and this is their first book, and like forever, nobody's going to remember or worry that it says 2020 on it. What they're going to see is that their first week of sales was 0. And it just looks crappy. So it is a shitty time to be an author, let me tell you.
So a couple of fun, lighthearted questions. One, someone wants to know if they can come live with us.
I mean, it is a fun house.
Well, I was actually thinking, there's the house where we literally rent it out, and you can, in fact, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, book time with Michelle. I usually show up included, but that's Inspiration House for folks who don't know about that.
Ghosts come along with that deal.
True.
Not cats. We leave the cats at home. The Inspiration House, one of the reasons that we have the 2 separate spaces is Inspiration House is pet free because not everybody would be able to come and hang out.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, living pet free because as far as I can tell, there is at least one spirit dog, and a number of people have seen spirit cats there too.
But dead pets don't shed.
I beg to differ. I still find terrier hairs in that house, and there's no possible
I think they're
way.
just left over.
I don't know.
Well, I would know. That would honestly be a neat research
Yeah,
project.
that would be some pretty crazy apportation of objects. Just
the regular appearance of white terrier hairs.
Yeah.
Oh, is the Kyphi eatable?
This one I would not recommend. I changed up enough of the things. Nothing is toxic, but there are some warnings with Google Gum, Opoponax particularly, and it's more about like if you overdo it, that you'll get some gastric distress, and for that reason, probably not a good idea to put this one in your mouth.
It's sort of like, is it like eating caviar, or is it more expensive than caviar? Caviar is also food.
I don't know how expensive caviar is in general. Well, here's the thing: is there right now a single pound of dragon's blood is going for between $160 to $200. And there's pretty much a pound of dragon's blood in this, and that's only one of the ingredients. So it's
probably best used as incense.
Yeah, it's best used as incense in the sense that you are burning incense because it is precious, and it is an offering also because of how rare and precious it is. Agarwood is even more ridiculous. There's some of the ingredients that are pretty simple, like catnip. I put cat mint into this one. Regular Kyphi calls for Egyptian mint or Nile mint, and just based on the scent, the subtler scent of cat mint. And let me tell you, the cats were very interested in the process while I was doing that.
They were the most interested. There was a question from a little while back about whether you could use this to help in a past life regression.
Yes. This one may be less so simply because it as far as I know, I made this recipe not based off of a past life. Well, okay, as far as I'm reasonably certain I made it up this time. It wouldn't be the first time I did something like that. But
sure, not from.
But I will say, the other Kyphis are very useful for past life stuff, especially if you feel a connection to the culture from whence it hails. I would also recommend that, like, if you feel that you've got a connection to, to pick a culture, any culture, and you want some of the bigger chunks out of there. Like,
Okay.
smarter thing to do would be to just sort of like get the anyway.
Yeah. You mean I want the bigger chunks here?
No.
No.
They'll be harder to
Gotcha.
to think. So Silver Mirror or the other vintage of Kyphi are the ones that I would recommend more for past life work, particularly if you feel that you have a connection to ancient Egypt, the Hellenic world, because this was actually used across Syria, Greece. Like, it became a very popular scent by the Hellenic era, and so it was widely used throughout the whole Mediterranean world. And if you think you have lives back then, this might be a good scent trigger for that. Also consider if there's other cultures where you've got a strong connection, where you think maybe you have a life. Do a little research and see like what scents might have been key, memorable scents, things that you might not have or probably don't regularly encounter here and now. Agars wood, aloes wood might be a really good place to start with that, especially if you feel like you've got Asian connections. So scent, incense are such a part of the spiritual practice of people around the globe, and in every case they use, like, there's certain things that are native to where they're at, that kind of mark the practice, mark the scent. Tobacco and sweetgrass and sage, white sage for the Americas, copal a little further down, Palo Santo. So coming to be aware of what were the sacred scents of a particular people and a particular culture, and in a respectful way, if you're trying to see, do I have a connection to that? See if you can't call things forward with a little bit of that scent. Now, one caveat is a lot of these things are being over-harvested and harvested in ways that are really not sustainable. So do yourself, the world and the cultures, the favor of trying to find things that are sustainably harvested and produced by the members of the culture to which they are important. If you're going to get your white sage, get it from one of the Indian reservations where this is an important thing. Like, don't just go buy it from a knockoff shop that is honestly making a profit off of those people's spiritual tradition.
That was excellent advice. How would you suggest going about finding shops like that? What process did you use?
I popped around online. I asked a couple of people on Twitter. There's a number of native folk, particularly. Actually, I got the idea from what's her name? Tara. I think I'm gonna.
Tamara?
No. Just random person that I follow on Twitter,
okay.
And she's native, and she had a little bit of she had a moment where she was like, here's why this is bad, and here's how you can do better. And I liked what she had to say. Like, it wasn't like she was shaming anybody. She was pretty much being like, this is my people's stuff, and if you really want to partake in it and do anything, so get it from us. Don't get it from some little shop that's basically like the Walmart family buying this stuff and just ripping it out and repackaging it. You're not even going to get it with the same intent. If it's harvested the same way it's always been harvested, if it's dried the same way it's always been dried, there's a difference.
Yeah. Yes.
Good. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yay! I'll make a dragon's blood.
Dragon's blood, by the way, has nothing to do with blood or dragons, beyond its color, and is actually sap from a palm.
Let's see, I'm scrolling back because I missed a bunch of stuff because I was over there. Cost of caviar.
That was you.
65 to 85 for 30 grams.
Okay, so
Is that comparable?
gum mastic is more expensive than that, and that's
Wow.
one of the key ingredients. Because yeah, they'll sell that in 20 grams, 30 grams, and the highest I can find is 500 grams. Um, well, no, I think actually it's probably comparable to. It depends because they've got kind of a monopoly on gum mastic. It only grows on like Chios in Greece. Like there's a Chios association that has like all control over where and how you get this stuff. COVID has sort of wreaked havoc with most of my suppliers for this stuff.
Yeah, that's the saddest thing about this.
Yeah.
A couple of folks who have just recently joined the stream are asking, is this just for personal use? Is it available on the store?
Yeah.
There is a link just below the video, right down there. And that is where you can buy some. There are very limited quantities available, but as we roll it, we'll be updating those.
Yeah.
So even if it sells out tonight, that's because we haven't rolled enough to ship out this week.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you see here, like there's a big old pancake of Kyphi that you can see here, and this is the entirety of the batch that was started on June 7th during the lunar eclipse. The batch before that in May was on the supermoon and made over the next 10 nights. And the stuff has to cure for multiple months. And I think, longer in Northeast Ohio than it might ordinarily have to because it has a lot to do with getting some of the moisture out. And our summers are pretty muggy.
Yeah.
It's going to come, it will be sticky when it makes its way to you. And it's also something that I don't like shipping during the summer because it melts. Like if I were to ship it in the summer and it were to sit out in the sun for a long period of time,
even a couple hours.
Yeah, even a couple. Yeah, you would just end up like with one big massive goo. Now, I mean, the good thing with that is you just pinch off a little bit, roll it, and use it. And that's there are passages in like the demonic texts and the Greek and Roman magical papyri that describe exactly that, where you have like a little lump of this incense and you just kind of keep that around. It keeps for a very long time. And when you need it, you just pinch off a little bit like we are and roll it into a little ball and put it on your little incense burner.
So we've got a question. Do you have suggestions of ways to overcome fears around hauntings or experiences that are, sort of otherworldly? Like, would you recommend a seance?
I mean, so this might be some of my psych background talking, but the first thing I would recommend is trying to figure out, was there an experience or a cluster of experiences that brought the fear about? Whether you had an experience that was frightening or you were shamed about being able to see stuff, or you had a family member or a friend who talked about a bad experience, like, where do you think the feelings come from? And if you can figure that out, it's been my experience that like you really can't conquer it until you face that why. Like figure out and contextualize, like figure some way to not ignore that trigger, but to make peace with it, to determine like what do you do with it, what do you think about it now, even if that's simply going, yeah, I have reason to be scared of certain aspects of this, and that's okay, because fear is just another way of it's information, it's data, it's a way of reacting to our environment, and sometimes it's a very smart way of reacting to our environment. So understanding where the fear comes is the first step. Determining how you really feel about that event, like what caused the fear, is the next step. And then basically making peace with your fear as something that can sometimes protect you, but isn't always right. Because you're not always going to be in exactly the same situation. Just because you played with matches as a kid once and the cover of the matchbox was red and you burned yourself. It's possible to develop a negative reaction to the color red because now you associate it with the matches and you burnt yourself. But every time you encounter the color red, you're not necessarily going to burn yourself on a match. So taking that by extension to even times when you're afraid of spirit interactions because of a legitimate experience, step back and ask yourself, is this the exact same situation? Yes? No?
It sounds like in this case, the fear came from mean siblings who scared them.
Ah.
Grr.
Yeah. Some of it then is dealing with how you feel about that, dealing with maybe the betrayal, the fact that you're not sure you can trust people, and that trust may extend to the experiences themselves. So, you kind of had siblings who scared you. Well, they were also lying to you, most likely, that there wasn't. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they probably told you to be afraid of something that wasn't actually there. And now you're carrying this fear because now you don't even know, like, is it there? Is it not there? Is it going to hurt you? How do you even know and who do you trust? And until you get over some of that, it's probably always going to be scary. If you want to use kind of like a immersion therapy with it, which is, just dump yourself into it, try someplace. First of all, go with someone who you trust, who you know has your back, who you feel safe around. And pick a place, don't go to Valiska Axe Murder House. Like, don't just dump right into the deep end of the pool. Go someplace where enough people say, yeah, we have experiences here. They're not super scary, but things happen. Go somewhere safe. Go with someone safe. And give yourself an out. Don't commit to like the full overnight. I mean, if you need to rent a room, that's cool. But allow for and give yourself permission to leave if you don't feel comfortable. Make sure you've got
a safe space for yourself.
Yeah, have an escape plan. And then just give it a try.
That makes sense. I personally quite like the next question. Will you write an autobiography someday?
I'm not ready yet, but I've been getting asked that. I guess since I'm pushing 50, like everybody's like, you might pop off sometime soon. So
you better not.
No plans yet.
If you think I'm letting you get away. But seriously, why not like write one now? And then in another 20 years, like volume 2 comes out. Because who knows what you're going to get up to? Is it
actually the hardest part for writing a biography? There's so much, and it's so unlikely. Like there was,
hey, JMS did it.
Yeah,
this is great.
That's fair, and his is also equally unlikely.
This one, there's a big clump of something hard. Should I
Okay,
take that out?
I've been putting those in my little reject pile.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could get it out. So they're those cypress roots. Actually,
those
no.
were hard to grind up.
In this case, it's not the cypress roots. Actually, the stuff that didn't melt. So the Google gum, most of it melted, and then there were some little chunky bits.
That. Yeah.
And that's partly because it's the way it was gathered. So there were little bits of actual tree in there still, like this one, which is like literally
it's a giant chunk
wrapped around a big old chunk of tree. Some of the frankincense that I got that also had bark in it as well, which was kind of cool.
And somebody else likes the idea of writing a biography with like different sections, so you can have one later.
Yeah, seriously though, like where do I even start?
At the beginning. Just decide what the beginning is. The beginning could be today, actually.
Yeah, it would. I don't know. Like there's also honestly like there's some stuff that I'm not quite sure I've worked through yet, because I will talk about growing up with my psychic grandma. And I'm raised by my grandmother and her sister and her brother, and I had some really I learned some wonderful lessons from my grandmother, and there were also some really wonderful times with my grandmother, and she was also a really horrible, scarring person to grow up with, and both of those things are true. And it's sort of difficult to figure out like how best to approach that. You know, not to just vilify her, because she was an incredibly broken person who really, really needed more mental health care than she got. And at the same time, she taught me an awful lot about how psychic abilities work and how to keep track, like the whole journaling thing. And the things that I tell people, like, you know, you could be, it's easy to be psychic after the fact with predictive stuff. You should write it down first. That you should always question and analyze. Like, all of that came from her. She guided me through that. It was fantastic. And at the same time, as Illyria knows, there's just some really not good stuff there too.
Yeah, like really.
And I can't.
I mean, I feel like
I would feel disingenuous painting. Like, I don't believe in never speak ill of the dead. I think that what that does is that does a disservice to the victims. And honestly, it sets people up to assume, if they happen to be in a difficult situation, to assume that like nobody else has ever had to go through that.
Well, that's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. Is if you talk about her as a whole person,
Yeah.
because that's what she was, and that's how you interacted with her. That doesn't have to mean that you only talk about her in one way, or only talk about, one of the things you learned from her.
Yeah.
That's sort of the beauty of making a whole book.
Well, and then I mean, like, and everybody in my family was a freaking character. Like, holy crap! Great Aunt Rita, who nobody, like, she managed to go through her entire life lip reading deaf. Like nobody knew she was deaf. She lip read that well.
You think she knew she was deaf?
Oh, she totally knew she
Okay.
was deaf. And the thing was, is like the culture she grew up in, the family she grew up in, it was a huge, like, she hid her disability.
Oh.
She hid her disability. And I don't think she
sucks, especially for, like, there's a ton of beautiful deaf culture out there that
I know what happened. Like, I do not believe she was born deaf. I'd heard stories. There had been an explosion. Rita was at the gas stove when they were kids, and the gas stove blew up in her face.
Wow.
And I would hear stories from the family of Aunt Rita running out into the front yard, like with her hair and her clothes on fire, running around. And just, and she had, my family, let me tell you, heals on a level that doesn't make any rational sense. And so it was completely believable that Aunt Rita had no visible scars from this. But it seems like it blew out both her eardrums. So she would go on about being tone deaf because most people in the family were musically inclined. And her dad had wanted her to play violin, and that did not work out very well. But, oh God, the thing is sometimes the way she would misread lips was a little... So
revealing?
There was this time where she went to church. They're all Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
And we'd had this really cool priest, and he was actually cool enough that, like, some things happened and he was just like, I'm out. And then they replaced him with this hellfire and brimstone dude who was sure the apocalypse was coming. He would do like these extra sermons during the week where he would tell you to make these sacred grapes. It was some weird channeled recipe from like I mean it was some woohoo weird stuff. But Aunt Rita came back from one of these going, the Acropolis and Agamemnon are coming. The Acropolis and Agamemnon. And I'm like, huh? And she tries to explain what she heard from the preacher. I'm like, do you mean the apocalypse and Armageddon? Yes, the Acropolis and Agamemnon. And I'm like, oh, okay. Got that memo, cool.
Oh boy.
But like, also, like, it was a completely different world that they lived in. So Aunt Rita had actually struck and killed a man with her car. And I am not making this up. Like, this is one of those things where, like, where do I even put this story? So what I know is Rita was driving my gram somewhere, and it was raining, and they were in Cleveland, and visibility was low, and Aunt Rita hit something with the car and went over it, bump, bump, and Graham, and this really reveals my grandmother, Rita's like, oh, I think I hit something. I should stop. And my grandma's like, keep driving. Just keep driving. And they would tell this story over and over again. So like, and the details did not change. I have no doubt that my grandmother absolutely saw the person that my Aunt Rita hit and just told her to keep driving. That is completely in character with her. Aunt Rita goes back. She hadn't killed the man yet. He ends up in the hospital. And he exonerates her. Like he had been drunk. He was actually considering suicide. The fact of the matter is he had been thinking about throwing himself in front of a car, and he's sort of like, so pretty much like back at that time when the person doesn't press charges, nothing happened. So I mean, it's like way the fuck back there, but like that's just one family story. That time Aunt Rita just ran a guy down, and my grandma was like, "Keep driving, just keep driving."
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh, colorful family.
Someone who loves your books has asked, what is your next book going to be about?
Whew. Reincarnation is the one that is on the docket. In between that, there's I made contemplation cards, and I want to do some like written out meditations for those. And I don't know that I think of the Kyphi as like its own book. Like there's a lot of material with that I want to collect for people, but I don't think
It's
it'll
more
be
of a booklet.
Yeah, it'll be more of a booklet or just stuff that's up on the website, honestly.
Yeah.
So Past Lives is the next big one. That's another one that I had been putting off because of some autobiographical aspects of it. And I want to be clear that I'm not necessarily going to be like the tell-all of all of my past lives. It will be more about how do you remember, what do you do with past lives, what's the purpose, what's the best way to kind of put these memories into context with your current life, and how, if you happen to be somebody who has a lot of past life memories, how do you live this life without constantly like looking back? Like, because I don't think constantly gazing into the past is the purpose of having these memories. I think they only are useful in as much as they help you solve questions and give you answers and guidance for your life right now.
Well, actually, that ties in really nicely to what you were saying about fear before.
Yeah.
That sometimes what you learn in the past is no longer applicable. And you have to sort of have an idea in mind of like what you want to do with that information in order to, have the oomph to put it into context and not keep letting it rule you or divert you from things you might want to do.
My psych concentration is showing.
Your psych concentration always shows here.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. There are still a bunch of people on here, but I feel like there was this like spate of questions far enough back that I actually can't scroll with my Kyphi fingers to look at them.
Well,
so if anybody has new questions, I know my computer's turned a little
computer.
red. I mean, it looks good on it, but when it comes to computer stuff, I am very right-handed. Whoops.
Red-handed?
Yeah, no, exactly. Oh, do you have any special plans or advice on a ritual for the Halloween blue moon?
Oh, well, I do have some thoughts. And here's my thought. There are $210,000 dead and counting in the United States alone. And Samhain is a Day of the Dead, a time to honor the dead and honor ancestors. And we have an awful lot of newly minted ancestors this year. There are a lot of people who died alone, who died in fear, who died with their families maybe on a FaceTime call, who died suddenly, who didn't even realize that they were going to the hospital to die. They were just sedated and put on a ventilator, and then that was that. And that's a lot. That's a lot of tragedy and a lot of trauma and a lot of pain, both for the dead and for the living. So I would recommend that if you do anything this Samhain as a time of recognizing the dead or inviting them or making offerings to them, take a little extra care to think about the sheer number of new folks who are on that side who are probably hurting, possibly confused, probably angry, and do something for them. Whether it is to honor them, to acknowledge them, to offer them some compassion, or to cry to the heavens for some kind of vengeance for them, so that anyone who might be responsible for perpetuating this, or for just through action, or through action or inaction, like, do something for the dead. There are too many of them right now.
A couple of questions. A couple of different people are wondering how to tell the difference between past life memories and current life memories.
Well, I mean, one of...
Or actually the question is past lives and imagined lives in one case.
Okay, so the first thing that I usually ask people to do if they're going to start doing memory work stuff with past lives is spend a little time understanding how your memory works for events in this life, particularly with an eye toward early childhood. Think about, learn how your memory works, because the one thing I've noticed is people have notable individual styles of memory. Some people are more visual, some people pay attention to their clothes, some people don't remember like really clear faces or details, but they remember how they felt during a given event. So spend some time learning how you remember. How do your memories in this life, the ones that you can confirm, how do they manifest to you? How do you experience them? Armed with that, now compare that template against any memories that you suspect might be from a different life. Because I will tell you, it becomes abundantly clear if something breaks that pattern. If you usually don't remember every single name and every single face and exactly everything that's going on, and you happen to have a memory that is so crystal clear that all of that, you know people's first names, their last names, you remember when they were born and died, you have all this information, question that memory. It might not actually be a memory. It may be more likely a case of cryptamnesia. When something breaks the pattern, it should be suspect, and you should put it under rigorous analysis. One of the other things I've learned about past life memories is there's times where you're just never going to be able to confirm or debunk it. Like, and you have to kind of make peace with the fact that, like, all right, well, maybe I made it up. And if you didn't consciously made it up, if it just occurred to you, then what you have to ask yourself is, what is it telling me? What is it teaching me? Like, there's a message here. Like, there's a reason why, you know, Colonel Mustard with the wrench in the library. Like, there's a reason why it has the details that it does. Even if it's made up, even if it doesn't have an actual historical connection. It's coming from you for a reason. It's in you for a reason. So then stop worrying about whether it's true or not, whether it's fact or not, and try to figure out, what does it say? What does it teach? How is this a reflection of who I am, or how I'm feeling, or something I'm avoiding?
I know the answer to this question may vary from person to person or culture to culture, but is there significance to feathers?
I will say that a lot of people who were raised in the Abrahamic faiths, and especially Western Christianity, have taken to assume that if a feather drops somewhere around them, their guardian angel is nearby, and like they take it as a sign of angels. But that is definitely cultural. Mostly I've heard people's perceive feathers as some message, some sign left as a little cue that someone is paying attention to you. If you want to think that someone is an angel or a spirit, a departed family member, or the totemic spirit of the bird that the feather might belong to, that will depend on what your background is. Or you might just go, hey, thanks, Crow. That was a fun feather. I will add it to my collection. I think broadly, at this point, the folkloric wisdom, at least here in the West, is a feather is a message.
Mm-hmm. That was certainly how my mom saw it.
Yeah.
I think she actually, and her sort of view of the world was that it was a specific sort of message about the future that she hadn't quite gotten around to decoding yet, but she would be on the lookout for like unusual things or interesting things, or especially pretty flowers after that, because that's what she liked to find.
Of which she took many pictures.
Yes. Yes. She took many pictures.
Didn't think it was possible to have too many pictures of Stonehenge, but her mom managed it.
Mm-hmm. Once it got past the one full photo album, I think it was at too many.
Yeah, there was a lot.
There were many more than that.
This is said as someone who appreciated, like she had a good eye for stuff. Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you'll ever write a book on dream interpretation?
I mean, I've got the book on dream walking, psychic dream walking, and it goes a little bit into dream interpretation, but mostly to demonstrate like how dreams work. I won't rule it out because it's a pretty interesting topic. What I will say is, if I write a book on dream interpretation, it is not going to be like a dictionary of when you dream this, it means that, and when you dream this, it means that. Because by my experience and my very strong opinion, that's just not how dreams work. They're incredibly unique. And so it would be a dream about, it would be a book about learning how to interpret your own dreams, which would have a whole lot about figuring out how this thing works. Because yours is different, yours is different, and mine is different, and this is really the undiscovered country, the space between my ears, your ears, this big, wild human brain that we have. Okay, I think I want to do this one more little row, and then I want to de-stickify my fingers.
Yeah, I mean, my fingers are, again, getting kind of sore from this plus all the book moving yesterday. We're getting into some interesting questions.
Yeah. Oh, you should tell everybody that you're watching Hellier.
I'm watching Hellier.
Yeah. Illyria hadn't seen Hellier yet, and I finally got Illyria to sit down and see Hellier.
The only problem with watching Hellier is that I watch it with this cool person who puts me to sleep real fast. So I'm watching like the first part of an episode of Hellier, and then I wake up at the end. I'm like, what'd I miss?
Oh, a lot.
I know. I keep missing a lot, but I really like it.
I should fib to you. I'm not good at fibbing.
No.
And just like, oh, you missed the goblins.
What? Everywhere. I mean, I love caving, so I'm already interested. But let's see.
Actually, yeah, you and Tyler Strand would really get along.
Much caving.
He likes to hike. He likes to go out alone into the wilderness. He goes in the mountains. He goes caving. He is fearless.
Yay! Sounds fun. So one of the questions, is God real? Just wondering.
Okay. That's a difficult one to answer in language that will make any sense.
Try the nonsense answer first.
Well, I mean, I believe that this thing, to give it even the word God, limits it. I believe that there is an infinite thing that is intelligent after a fashion, but in such a way that would defy our ability to really conceive it and process it. no matter what we may have been before we were wearing human suits, these are finite bodies. And so, God by definition is infinite. To connect to understand, to communicate with an infinite mind, an infinite entity in a finite body, in a finite mind, is to court insanity. You can get little glimpses, you can perceive through lenses. There's a reason why the great mystical traditions of the world will talk about approaching the throne of God, approaching the concept of God, getting to the foot of God, seeing the reflection of God, but never directly seeing God, him, her, their self, because it's too much to perceive. So I do believe that there is something that we can only call God. I actually approach the existence from something I read in James Gleick's book called Chaos. And it was his article on the Mandelbrot set and on fractals. And I went, actually, this is the article that I'm up for a Witchy Award for. There's an article I posted to Medium in August that kind of very, very broadly goes over this concept of fractals, the Mandelbrot set. God is the strange attractor, and sort of like my version of how that stuff works. And let me simplify it, super simple. In math, there's something called chaos theory. Fractals are these wonderfully complex, beautiful patterns that come out of that are generated through formulae. Basically, if you Google the Mandelbrot set, look it up. It's this beautiful, gorgeous thing. It is one of many, many fractals. Fractals are things that happen in nature where a pattern emerges over time and over repetition from what appears to be completely random choice. We can plot that mathematically, and there are formula to create fractals. And we didn't really have the ability to see those patterns emerge until we had computers, and we could put a ridiculous number of things to plot on an XY graph to see how these patterns spun out of just complete random choice. There's imaginary numbers involved in these, but more than that, there is a quantity that they call the strange attractor. And that quantity, again, super generalizing, is something that you cannot, math won't let you calculate it. You can't find it. You can't mash the numbers together. You can't deconstruct the pattern to see what the strange attractor actually is. It exists outside of the system, but it is what imposes that order on the system. And to me, God is the strange attractor. But I highly recommend James Gleick. The book is Chaos. You may feel a little out of your water with it. Like, he makes mathematics, some really deep stuff, very accessible, in my opinion. But it is a chunky, like, sink your teeth into this article. You may still find his Mandelbrot set article kicking around, because the book came out in like the late 80s. But the thing about fractals that struck me, particularly from the perspective of someone with a background in like the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus and the macrocosm and the microcosm and those concepts that are integral to Western magic, is that a fractal is infinitely varied and infinitely self-similar, and on like telescoping sort of layers. So if you go down to like this tiny, tiny, tiny little piece of the Mandelbrot set, you will see the pattern of the Mandelbrot set there. Don't eat that, cat. And if you go all the way back out, so basically it is an echo of its basic pattern over and over and over and over again in this fantastic spiral. And every iteration of it is slightly different, but every iteration of it is also recognizably the Mandelbrot set. It's fantastic. And to me, that's reality. And it shows to me that there's something that kind of guides the shape of things. And to me, that is my idea of God. And whether or not I've ever had any contact with that, we totally leave, because that is not the question anybody asked. And if anybody did, human brains are way too small. So,
Truth.
yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of mystical experiences, but I don't think that a human brain can comfortably wrap itself around God.
The infinite.
Yeah, the infinite.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
You will feel your mind fray before you can actually do it.
So, hopping off
Yeah.
this topic to a totally different topic, someone who is interested in developing their mediumship skills was wondering if there would be useful information in the Field Guide to Spirits class.
Yes, because how to communicate with different types of spirits is as important as the different types of spirits themselves. And I think something that people don't necessarily teach in mediumship classes is, you might be trying to communicate with dead humans, but there are more than that. And how do you recognize that? And how do you tell the difference? And when do you go, oh, this is bad. I should back off from this. This is actually dangerous. So absolutely, I will cover some of that in there.
And hopping back onto metaphysical fun.
Yeah.
Do you believe that there is an afterlife?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure I even have it's not even a belief at this point. I don't get the option of belief or not belief. 100, there are very few things that I will say yes without a doubt, 100%. That is part of my reality. There is.
And is that like a heaven type place? Or is it?
You exist beyond this body, and you get a couple of choices of things. You can go to some different spaces and different places. You can take a break. Sometimes you don't get the choice. Sometimes you have places you have to be. Reincarnation figures very heavily in my experience of the soul's journey. Is there such a place as hell? This is actually one of the best things my grandmother ever taught me, and I 100% believe it. And I love the fact that I found it in Tibetan Buddhist teachings as well. My grandmother believed that you made hell. Hell was of your own design. When you died, if you were too burdened with your guilt and your anger and anything else, you basically put yourself through hell. If you watch Lucifer,
Actually, yeah.
they actually put it on screen with that. So it's not that off the wall. It's also a fundamental part of Tibetan Buddhist afterlife stuff, a certain type of rebirth. Basically, you are reborn in your own little pocket dimension that is your personal hell, and everything that you encounter there is just a projection of all of your screwed up emotions until you can work through it.
Fears, expectations.
Yeah. Fears, expectations, guilt,
Regrets.
whatever. It's all your own projections until you can do the work to get through it. Basically, since you didn't do the shadow work during your life, you are compelled to do your shadow work in death.
Later.
So, yeah.
Start now, or you can reward yourself with ice cream.
Yeah. So I won't say that there is no hell. I think that people make their own hell. I do think that the idea that you are in hell forever and ever and ever and you never get out is a little short-sighted. Most of the other cultures that have an idea of a punitive afterlife, a place where you go to get punished, it's also a place where you can eventually get out of. You're not just there forever. In the Garuda Purana, which is the Hindu account of their version of hell with King Yama, it's not a forever thing. It's a get over your shit thing. And you're there until you get over your shit. But there's a purpose to the suffering. There's a purpose to the torture.
Oh, yeah. I remember you saying at some point that you were going to stop after another log.
It was a good question.
It really was. I am loving these questions. I'm also getting a little sore.
Yeah, no, I'm
stiff.
good with stopping because I'd like to clean up. I'd get a cup of tea.
Yeah.
wouldn't mind sitting down. I know you wanted to do more work on the library, but sitting down would be nice too.
Oh yeah, sitting down. I mean, I want to sit down too. Briefly.
Illyria is a perpetual motion machine. I don't know if anybody's noticed.
I'll sit down for at least a minute.
Uh-huh.
A whole minute.
Yeah.
2 minutes?
Sure.
A minute and a half.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, somebody's got to keep the garden in shape.
That, yeah. And
That was a lot of Kyphi we rolled.
Yeah.
Let's see, can I?
bigger, chunkier pieces too. I'm just gonna put that in there and a lid on that so the cats don't get into it. Yeah, if you have pets and you work with essential oils or any of this weird stuff, do some research to make sure that it's not toxic to them at all. Like tea tree oil is bad for cats. If you have a diffuser, you could be causing long-term kidney and liver damage just from what they're smelling. So just be aware. Even if it's not toxic to you, it might be toxic to your pets. Like new things I learned in buying a pan was if you have a bird and you have like Teflon pans, you shouldn't have the bird anywhere where you're cooking on the Teflon because it releases fumes that can kill the bird. Like nobody told me that, like ever. Yeah.
So, this is what we have made. That's a lot of Kyphi.
Yeah.
It's gonna smell real good when it gets burned. Did you already clean your hands?
No.
Oh. Okay.
No. I'm just
I was
about
gonna
to-
say those are.
No. I'm gonna put these little pieces in here.
Makes sense.
Little off bits. I'll probably burn one of those to see like what it's like.
So yeah.
Well,
So
yeah.
will we be doing more live streams?
Yeah,
'Cause, I mean, there's a lot
Yeah,
more
no, there's
Kyphi to
still a
roll.
lot to there's a lot to roll. So like as we do it, because honestly, it's a long, slow process. We could just sit here doing it and like natter on at one another, but why not just also have fun with you?
Yeah. So keep your eyes out. YouTube and Facebook. We'll be live streaming to both probably later this week.
Yeah.
And yeah, a field guide to spirits starts on Saturday.
Mhm.
So get your tickets now. You can get tickets either on the website, in that link that has been up on the screen for a long time because I forgot to take it down. Or
join the Patreon.
yes.
And get that in like a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I think if you join the Patreon at the $50 a month level, you get access not only to a field guide to spirits, but also to 21 other classes that Michelle has taught, that we've recorded. They're all up for sale individually, also on the website store. So however you like to get access to stuff, you can get access to stuff. And it'll be fun. So thanks for hanging out with us. Cool. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.